Hello, and welcome to this workshop on how to date with courage, clarity, and confidence. I'm delighted that you're here. I'm delighted that you've decided to spend this time with me and invest your time and energy and money in your romantic life and in changing your dating and relationship patterns so that you can find a healthy and loving relationship. This is my passion to support people to change their patterns, to stop experiencing heartache and pain, and to find healthy love. So, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about me. Many of you know me already, but very briefly, I used to be single for many years. These are my single years. It was all about my career. It was all about my job. I was a political journalist. I traveled all over the world. I did have boyfriends. I did have relationships, but my focus was on my career. And also those relationships that I had, they all failed. They didn't last. Often they were unhealthy. I was attracted to emotionally unavailable people. I was attracted to people who didn't value me, who couldn't meet my needs. And then if somebody came along who was emotionally available and interested in me, I would run a mile in the opposite direction. And this continued until my late 30s, early 40s. And I decided that I really wanted to do something about it. By that stage, I was thinking that I probably wouldn't have children, but I really wanted a partner by my side. I really wanted a life partner. So I dedicated myself to that dream and I invested a lot of time and energy and money in understanding myself, in studying counseling and psychotherapy, having therapy, and getting lots of support around my dating and relationship patterns. And the result, I'm pleased to say, was a transformation. So not only did I change my relationship status, but I also transformed my life. And I have found that many of the women and men who come to work with me, often they need to go on this journey. It's not always just about changing the dating and relationship patterns. Sometimes it's about being more authentic in your life, showing up more courageously, learning to have a voice and speak your truth, possibly changing your career to something more creative that lights your fire. And I did all of these things. Not only did I change my career, so I moved out of journalism and slowly I found my way into writing my book, How to Fall in Love, becoming a coach and hosting retreats and doing speaking and doing a TEDx. But I also moved to the beach here in Dorset and I focused on making a relationship work. And that's what happened. And I got married at the age of 48. So now I am delighted to be doing this work and living by the sea with my husband and supporting other people to achieve their dreams, whether they be in love or dating or in life and career. So that's a little bit about me. I also write on Substack from Midlife with Love if you'd like to read my latest articles. And I am delighted to say that I have changed people's lives, and they are the words of my clients. I have supported people to go from dating disasters to dreamy relationships, real relationships, not fantasy relationships, to date with clarity and courage and confidence, and to end the confusion. And you can read in these testimonials that people, women have had their lives changed, and I'm delighted to have played a part in that. And in all these cases, they learned to date with courage, clarity, and confidence, and to move through their blocks and to understand their fears and to change their patterns. And that is what we are going to do today. So this workshop is the third in a three-part series, and they are all interconnected. And some of you have done all the workshops in the series, and thank you for investing in that. And if you haven't, you can still invest in the first 2 workshops in the series. Drop me an email, Catherine@catherinebaldwin.com, and I can make that happen for you. So the first workshop was Lay Your Foundations for Healthy Love. Then we looked at facing our fears and changing our patterns. And today is about dating with courage, clarity, and confidence. So before we look at dating, I would like you to check your foundations. Now, if you're watching on replay, I'd like you to pause right now and go through these questions. I won't read them all out. They're there on the screen, but this is about, I know I bang on a lot about the foundational work, but I think that without it, we are floundering and we are struggling and we are repeating the same patterns. We are hurting. We're making the same mistakes. We're being put off dating altogether because we're getting our hearts broken and we're getting hurt. So check your foundations. This is about your connection to your feelings. Are you feeling your feelings or are you numbing them? We all numb them to some degree, but how numb are you? Are you numbing them with food, with alcohol, with compulsive work, with compulsive exercise, with fantasy, always dreaming about dating or an unavailable man? How are you numbing your feelings? And how connected are you to your intuition, to your truth? And how much time do you spend connecting to your intuition and your truth? Really connecting to that wise inner voice. I spent many years dating with really faulty foundations, and I wasn't grounded, I wasn't rooted, I wasn't connected to myself, I wasn't feeling my feelings. As many of you know, I had a binge eating disorder. I was binge eating. I was compulsively over exercising. I was overworking to the point of burnout. I wasn't present. I wasn't present to my feelings. I wasn't present to myself. So how could I be present to someone else's feelings or to a relationship? So think about that. Check your foundations. We need solid foundations. This is putting the horse before the cart rather than the other way round. This is checking your foundations. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to give you a moment to think through those questions, and then we'll come back and look at another aspect of the foundations that we need. In those questions, I'm also asking about your self-worth wounds, if you have awareness of those early life wounds. I'm asking about your self-esteem. I'm asking about whether you know how to parent yourself. So these are all vital questions, and they are going to inform the work that we're doing in this workshop. The next thing we want to check is, how are your fears and patterns? So this was workshop number 2. And again, I encourage you to pause the recording and to think about your fears and your patterns. And again, if you want to watch that workshop back, just get in touch and I can make that happen for you. So fears and patterns. And when we go dating or look for a healthy relationship, we have so many fears. I did, and I know many of my clients do or have had. The fear of not being enough, the fear of being seen, the fear of abandonment, the fear of rejection, the fear of being found not to be good enough, the fear of being trapped, of being stuck, of making the wrong choice, and the fear of, the fear of committing to one person. I had a huge fear about committing to one person. And, with that fear, what do? We end up with patterns that lead us into relationships with unavailable people, emotionally unavailable people, or we run away from the available people. So again, have a think about your fears and patterns. How is your awareness in this area? Check in with yourself. This is another part of your foundation that's really vital. So I'll move forwards once you've taken the time to do that. So we have checked our foundations, we have checked our knowledge of our fears and patterns, and now we're going to take the show on the road. This means that there's only so much work we can do in terms of meditation and journaling and healing and crying and understanding our blocks and our obstacles. There comes a point when we have to go and give it a go. We have to go out and date, because only in that way do we get experiences that help us to heal. So inevitably, our buttons are going to be pressed. We're going to react to people. We're going to like them. We're going to fall for them, or we're going to want to reject them. And we need to have those experiences to gather information, not only about the other person, but about how we date. So we're going to take the show on the road and transform our experience of dating. And for this, we need courage, we need clarity, and we need confidence. So before we look at each of these elements, let's talk about why you're here. So you might be avoiding dating altogether. You might not even know that you're avoiding dating. You're just really busy with work, with social life, or you might be dating a lot and not having great results. You might be feeling demoralized, disillusioned, depressed about the whole thing. You might be feeling heartbroken or confused or bemused because you keep falling for the same unavailable people and it hurts. You might be confused about someone who likes you and you don't know whether they're right for you, and you're looking for green flags or red flags and you don't know which is which. So you're here because you're struggling to have a joyful, fruitful experience of dating, and I'd like to support you with that. So just have a think for a moment why you're here. What are your biggest dating and relationship challenges? So for me, when it comes to dating challenges or relationship challenges or ending up heartbroken or in pain, it's because we didn't spot the signs soon enough. So often we think, oh, that came out of the blue. Suddenly that person turned out to be emotionally unavailable or unkind or not right for me. And it seems to have come out the blue. But generally, especially with the people that I work with, we can identify a moment when we began to slide down the slippery slope. So in the early stages of dating, perhaps in those first conversations online, you're WhatsApping each other and the other person says something and it doesn't sit right with you, but you let it slip. You let it go and you give them the benefit of the doubt. Now, I'm all for giving people the benefit of the doubt, but we want to inquire. We want to ask for more information. We want to clarify what the person meant by what they said if it doesn't sit right with us. So we are gathering information. And what many of us do is, because we really want the relationship to work out, maybe we've been single for a long time, maybe we find the person really attractive. What many of us do is we ignore the signs. We ignore that little niggle, the tap on the shoulder. We ignore those signs and we go for it anyway. And then further down the slope, we end up tumbling, we end up stumbling, we end up in pain because the person has turned out to be unavailable or not really into us or a bit flaky or unkind or whatever it is. You know, that's why foundations are so important. That's why the steps we're going to talk about are so important, but also the knowledge that you need of your fears and patterns to stop going down this slippery slope. And you might want to think for a moment, again, you can pause the recording, you might want to think for a moment about your past relationships or dating experiences and the moment when perhaps you overlooked something. You didn't listen to yourself. You didn't tune into yourself. You overlooked something. So think about that, and we're going to move forwards to confidence. So confidence can be surface level or it can be deep. And in this photo, I am showing lots of outward confidence. So I am knocking on the door of 10 Downing Street. I am asking the Prime Minister questions once I get inside. I'm a journalist. I have to be nosy. I have to be confident. But on the inside, I am riddled with low self-esteem and low self-worth and fear of getting it wrong and fear of making a mistake and self-worth wounds that go right back to my childhood. I don't belong here. I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. I'm going to get it wrong. The other person's going to be angry with me. This is the kind of confidence we need. We need the confidence to run deep in us. So it's not just about showing up on a date with looking good, and maybe you've been to the gym or you've been for a swim in the sea, which would be my way to prepare. You feel good. It is about really asking yourself honestly, how valuable do I feel? How lovable do I feel? And how does this lack of worth or lack of value that I might have in me inherently, how does that show up when I go dating? How does that lead me to abandon myself in relationships, neglect myself in relationships, say yes when I mean no, not call out a behavior that doesn't sit right with me? How does this low self-worth show up in the boundaries that I set or don't set? Simple things. The person you're going to date says that they want to meet in the evening for a drink. You don't drink, or you are aware that you don't want to drink much on dates, and yet you go along anyway. And even though your boundary that you have made this promise to yourself that you're not going to drink on dates, or you're only going to meet at lunchtime, or you're going to go for a walk. So that's a really simple example. But then that snowballs. We end up on that slippery slope. We abandon ourselves at the beginning. We neglect ourselves at the beginning, and we don't speak our truth, and we don't set our boundary. And then we're off down the slippery slope. We are perhaps pleasing the other person. We are people pleasers, and we're pleasing the other person so that they want us, so that they love us, so that they stay with us. Whereas really what we want to do is show up authentically, be true to ourselves. These are some questions I'd love you to ask yourself about your worth, about your value, and to be really honest with yourselves. To be really honest with yourselves. Because otherwise we're going to end up going down the same path where we get hurt, where we think we're going to throw in the towel. What's the point of dating? I'm just not cut out for this. So this is where we want to really think about how deep is our confidence and our self-worth and our self-esteem. So think about that. And, if you've done the foundational work with me, you will have explored your self-worth wounds. You will have done some inner child healing. If you've done the fears and patterns work, you will understand that your behaviors are rooted in how you were treated when you were young, whether you were treated as valuable or worthy, or whether you weren't, whether you got the message that you're not good enough, or there's something wrong with you, or it's not safe to speak my truth. It's not safe to express my needs and wants. So think about that. So clarity, I like this picture because this lady looks like she has a lot of clarity. Again, clarity is multifaceted. Some of the work that I do on my Date with Courage, Clarity and Confidence course is about getting really clear on who am I? What are my likes? What are my dislikes? So let me just stop there for a moment, because many of us, if we grew up in dysfunctional homes, if we have a level of trauma or childhood challenges, we will have adapted and we will have found a way to show up in order to stay safe. And that often means abandoning our true selves, being inauthentic. And some of us reach midlife not knowing who we are, what we like, what we want to do with our lives, or not knowing what kind of partner we want to be with or what kind of life we want to build. For some of us, this is about finding ourselves, knowing ourselves, knowing our values, knowing our needs, knowing our wants, being clear on the kind of relationship we want to be in. Yeah, from my dating experiences, it took me a while to learn about the kind of relationship I wanted to be in. As many of you know, I'm a really outdoorsy person. I love the great outdoors. I love sport. I love exercise. But I did date people who weren't so keen on those sort of things. They were more into the arts or going to the theatre. And while I enjoy those things, if I had the choice, or if I had to choose between the two, I would choose to do a bit of both, but I would prioritize the outdoors. And so I discovered over time that the relationship that I wanted to be in was with someone who also loved to be outdoors and loved sport and exercise. And I wanted to spend time with that person. And all relationships are different. So you might want to be with someone who has very different interests to you. But get clear on how you want to spend your time. When we meet a romantic partner and get together with them and commit to them, we end up spending a lot of time with them. So how do you want to spend that time? What kind of compatibility will you be looking for? So you also want to get clear on your needs in relationships, and this can be involve so many things. I need kindness. I need gentleness. I need support. I need fun. I need laughter. I often ask my clients to do an exercise, a writing exercise around what is it that they believe they deserve in a relationship and what do they need in a relationship. And that first question is interesting because they might find that if they're in a relationship, they might find that they're not receiving what they deserve, that they're not being treated with kindness and compassion or receiving the support that they need, that they're not receiving the love that they need. This is about you knowing yourself and getting clear on what you desire and also deserve. And then the deeper aspect of the clarity question is around your wounds, your fears, and your patterns. And again, the Fears and Patterns workshop is really helpful for this, as is my book, as is my Laying the Foundations course. Clarity in terms of self-awareness. I mix and speak to a lot of people, either clients or friends who are dating. And there is such a difference between the conscious dating and the unconscious dating the mindful dating and the mindless dating. And there is a wonderful expression by Carl Jung around, unless we make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our life and we will call it fate. So, as many of you know, Carl Jung was a psychiatrist and a psychotherapist. In that wonderful quote that I love and that really resonates with me and the work that I do, we are making the unconscious or the subconscious conscious. We're becoming aware of it, so that when we go dating, we're not following this slippery slope or this pathway and spiraling down into a relationship that isn't good for us. We are pausing, we are taking time, we are noticing the green flags or the red flags, and we are really, we are being aware, we're being mindful of the actions we're taking, the behaviors that we're following. Again, this is about thinking about your wounds, your fears, and your patterns, and how conscious and aware you are of them. And in the fears and patterns workshop, and I'll just offer this to you in case you haven't watched that, I suggest that we do an exercise where we write down our relationship patterns. For example, always drawn to unavailable people. And then on the other side of the page, we write down our fears, for example, afraid of commitment. And then we draw a line because we see how our fears dictate and drive our patterns. And that's a really useful exercise. So have a think about that. I'm just going to pause for a moment. And before I go on, I just want to say that this is about changing what we can. And that's really empowering. And I know sometimes with dating, we get to the stage where, we might have been doing it for a while and we haven't had good results. And we get to the stage where we feel depressed, demoralized. It's just not working. And then we start blaming the landscape, the dating landscape. And I'm not saying the dating landscape is perfect, but we start blaming the apps, the dating websites, and we start saying things like, oh, there just aren't any decent people out there, all the good ones are taken. And this plays into that Carl Jung quote around oh, this is fate, I'm not cut out for this, it's not meant to be. But I want us to take our power back, to become empowered, and to change what we can. And we change what we can by taking these steps, by building our confidence, by growing our clarity, increasing our awareness, and also vitally, and I'm coming on to that now, by being courageous and having the courage to do things differently. This is about doing things differently, which is chapter 4 in my book, and also module 4 on my Laying the Foundations course, if you've done that or would like to do that. So I am moving on to courage. I was writing about this earlier and planning this workshop, and I got really moved by this idea of courage. Thinking about my own journey and how much courage it took to get to where I am. And I'll talk about that a bit more in a while. But also, the clients that I've supported, the courageous steps that they have taken. It takes a lot of courage, not only to look at our pasts, to explore our childhoods, to dig deep and feel the pain again. Many of us need to bring those memories to the surface so that they can be processed in a way that they weren't at the time, so that they can be processed and healed. We might need to cry. We might need to spend a lot of time journaling and working through these things, and that takes courage. And there's no surprise that a lot of people don't want to do it. But if you are working with me or on this workshop, you have courage and you are ready to do this work. Yeah, because this is what I talk about, about going deep and changing the things that we can. So courage involves self-honesty. And, I go right back to the foundational work. It's about being rigorously honest with yourself. Where am I numbing? Where am I escaping my feelings? Where am I using? Where am I fantasizing? Where am I chasing people who are unavailable? Where am I getting caught up with people who are attached to somebody else? And I say that absolutely without judgment, because I did that a lot. This fantasy that this person who's attached to somebody else is my person, and the hold that they have over, well, they had over me, the obsession. It takes such courage to break those patterns, to walk away when there's nobody else, to walk away when we don't think there's anyone out there for us, to leave a okay relationship, a good enough relationship, because we believe we deserve better, but it's frightening because we don't know if we'll ever achieve that. But, we have to be true to ourselves. We have to follow our hearts. If you can dig deep and find the courage to do this work, then this will set you up to succeed. I know it will, because it did that for me, and it's done that for so many clients. So be honest with yourself and have the courage to tell the truth to other people, the people you are dating. And by that, I mean, express yourself. I have a client who found it really difficult to say what was on her mind. A man might cross her boundaries. He might say something inappropriate. She might feel that that was a little bit out of order. But then she would rationalize and normalize and think, oh, that's just what happens, or they've had a bad day, or maybe I deserve it. Not tell the truth. We don't have to cut somebody off because they've said something unkind. As I said earlier, we want to investigate. We want to gather information. What did you mean by that? Can I clarify? I felt this when you said that. Let's talk about it. So this is emotional intimacy. When we have the courage to speak our truth, to say what's on our heart, to hear the other person's point of view, to rock the boat. If you acquired codependency because of your childhood, which often happens if you grew up around dysfunction or addiction, then you will be compelled to people please and to keep the status quo and not to rock the boat. And as we grow in courage and perhaps in age and emotional maturity, we become more willing to rock the boat in order to build an authentic connection. And that's what we want. So you might also need the courage to walk away if you're gathering information and you get the information that this relationship isn't right for you. You might need the courage to walk away, or you might need to find the courage to stay and to commit, which for many of us is harder than walking away. I'd say it probably was for me. I was pretty adept at ending dating experiences, ending relationships, deciding that he wasn't right, he wasn't good enough. In fact, as many of you know, I ended the relationship with my now husband, I think 3 times. So I was very good at walking away, not so practiced at staying and committing, because for many years I didn't realize the fears that I had around commitment and intimacy and staying, going through the challenges of building a relationship, because it's not all roses. We have to negotiate difference. We have to state our boundaries. There's something in my book and on my courses around the ideal, ordeal, real deal. And it's a theory put forward by Harville Hendricks, who was an author and I think a psychotherapist. It takes huge courage to get to the real deal. So the ideal is really easy, to fall in love, to get that oxytocin feeling going. Oxytocin, it's a drug, it's like cocaine. We fall in love, and often with unavailable people because they're even more attractive if we fear commitment. And so we're in this ideal stage. Some of you might not experience the ideal stage. I struggled with the ideal stage because very quickly I would find fault. But you might be on the pink cloud. And then after that comes the ordeal stage, where you have to negotiate difference and you find things about the person that you don't like and you fall off the pink cloud and you get into reality. That's a tough stage for those of us with fantasy that a relationship is just all going to be dreamy, and the fantasy of perfect care, which many of us have because we didn't receive adequate care as children, so we emerge into adulthood with the fantasy of perfect care. The ordeal stage is hard, and many of us run a mile at that stage. But if you can stay, if you've chosen a good person and you can stay and you can thrash it out and work it out, then you get to the real deal, which is amazing. True connection, true intimacy, emotional maturity, a real relationship in the real world. Or alternatively, you go through the ordeal, you do the work, you try your best, but at the end of that, you decide in an emotionally mature way, not a knee-jerk way, that it's no deal, and you walk away. Think about courage for a moment. Think about in which area of your life or dating life you need more courage. Is it to be real, to be true, to be authentic, to have a voice, to speak your truth? Is it to walk away? Is it to stay? Is it to get out there? Is it to arrange dates? Have a think about that, and I'll just pause for a moment. Okay, so we've looked at the clarity, at the confidence, and at the courage. And what I intend with this is to give you a framework for dating. Like the foundations gave you a checklist for your foundations, the fears and patterns gave you a checklist for your fears and patterns. This is a framework for dating. And part of this framework are these 5 points. So if we have courage, clarity, and confidence, we can navigate these 5 points. So these are the 5 steps in my Date with Courage, Clarity, and Confidence course. They're also in my book. So understanding your trigger points. This relates to our fears and our patterns. So these are the things that push our buttons when we go dating. When you have a knee-jerk reaction to someone and you think, oh, I just don't like them, or I don't like the way they eat, or the way they dress, or the way they speak. Often you're not compatible, but in many cases, that is your fear. That is your fear. And you're finding fault. You're finding something in that person that you don't find attractive because you want to push them away. And you might have heard me say before that judgment, criticism, and fault finding creates distance. So this is one of my primary traits that I'm not proud of, but I judge and I criticize the other person. And I still do it today in my marriage. And I really have to zip my mouth and hold my tongue as much as possible, because what I do when I do that is I push him away. I create distance. And that's what happens when you walk out of your house and go to a date and you meet someone and you jump to all these conclusions initially. You're you're creating distance. You are sabotaging your chance of a real emotional connection. And this isn't about overlooking red flags. This is about giving someone a chance. But more than that, it's about understanding yourself. It's about understanding what's at play in you. Oh, I'm finding fault. I'm judging. I'm pushing somebody away. Often the things we find fault in are things that we don't like about ourselves. So, for me, any sign of weakness, any sign of vulnerability, I couldn't bear that in a man for a while until I did my healing. I also couldn't bear any indication that they would overeat, that they were overeating, because I was a compulsive overeater. I was so judgmental of that. And one of the ways through that is we love all parts of ourselves. We are compassionate towards ourselves, and then we can bring that compassion to the other person. So think about your trigger points when you go dating. If your buttons get pressed and it's an automatic knee-jerk reaction, ask yourself, what's going on here? Is this the other person, or is this in me? Is this something that needs to be healed in me? So throw away the list is another part of the framework, and this builds on what we discussed in terms of clarity. It's about being clear about the kind of person you want to be with, and being clear about the types of people who didn't work for you in the past. So often we're drawn to similar types, maybe the edgy type, slightly emotionally unavailable or distant. I certainly was. And we want to broaden our horizons and not be so specific about the type of person we go for. And, it was the biggest surprise to me that I ended up being so attracted to my husband, because he wasn't that type. He was secure and solid and steady and rational and kind. And I had had lots of experiences of dating people who were a bit edgy and like to drink a lot. I was always drawn to these people who were on the edge of addiction, or adrenaline junkies like me. And as I matured emotionally, I understood that what I thought I wanted, or who I thought I wanted, wasn't the person I needed. So this is about being more open to different types, being open to being surprised, and trying, experimenting. This is all an experiment. And this is where the joy comes in. We are experimenting. We get to meet new people. We get to experiment with new behaviors, setting boundaries, and so forth. And and then we gather information and we decide whether we want to continue or not. But we do so mindfully, not mindlessly. We do so having thought it through in a mature way, rather than a knee-jerk rejection, because that is often rooted in fear. Another issue many of my clients have is they don't make time for love. And it's easy to rationalize this because we're busy. Maybe you run your own business, or maybe you have a busy social life or family life or whatever it is. I just don't have time. But this is another example of the Carl Jung quote. We kind of call it fate. I just don't have time. Often at the root of this is our fear. We're really good at doing our work. We're good at doing our hobbies. Maybe we're a good friend, but when it comes to romantic relationships, we struggle with that. And we don't want to do this because it's hard. So we kind of rationalize the fact that we're not dating and just say, I don't have time. So making time for love is not just about love. It's about making time for you. It's about making time for self-care, for fun, for joy, for connection, for seeing your friends, for doing nothing, reading a book, lying in the sun. It's about making time. You might need to do that, make time for yourself before you can make time for love. I've talked a bit about boundaries, and if you'd like to delve deeper into this, chapter, what would it be, 9 of my book, or my Date with Courage, Clarity and Confidence course, talks a lot about boundaries. Let's just start with actually getting on a date. So you might need a boundary that propels you to do some online dating or propels you to go out and about and meet new people. And that might be, I'm going to spend 2 hours on a dating app once a week, and that's all it needs to be. Or I'm going to book one social event once a month where I encounter new people. And you do that. And that is kind of that boundary that lifts you up and out of your comfort zone to do something new, to get started. And then at the other end, when you go on dates or starting to get to know someone, you might need the boundary that is a limit. So I'm not going to drink more than a glass of wine, or I'm going to make sure I get home by 10 o'clock, or I'm going to manage my thinking and my fantasy thinking and my, I have in the book, I have an idea of boundary around our thinking. So does your imagination run wild? Do you imagine yourself getting married to the person after the first date? Or do you cut them off immediately? And do you need a boundary around that? I need to give it 3 dates. So think about your boundaries. And also you can be accountable to others. So that's why I like working in groups with my work, because we can have conversations between us and we can be accountable around those boundaries. And the bold choices come when it's time to walk away or it's time to make a decision to commit. Your bold choices might also be around things that you need to do first in order to have a healthy dating life and a healthy relationship. So some of my clients literally needed to at least make inroads into changing their careers, into dropping something that was, destroying them, like making them soul dead, into something that would bring them alive, something more creative, something more passionate, something more authentic to them. So you might need to make a bold choice around that. And it doesn't have to be, I'm quitting that and I'm starting that, but it can be, I'm going to try and do a little bit of this creative project, make a bit more time for myself, reduce my hours at work, or at least leave on time. So it could be around your career. But your bold choices might be around like getting out there and dating, or moving into a more committed stage of the relationship when that opportunity arises. And to make bold choices, we need to be in touch with our courage. We need to be in touch with our courage. And, I've said this before, I said this in my TEDx, I get my courage being out in nature, being in the sea. I get inspired by other people, and also from seeing the courageous steps that I've already taken. And I'm sure you have all taken really courageous steps too. So that is, a framework for dating, along with courage, clarity, and confidence. So at this point, I would love to share a little bit about my experience with using the Date with Courage, Clarity, and Confidence framework, but also with, laying the foundations and facing my fears and changing my patterns. So for me, I had to go on the full transformation journey from a binge eating, compulsively exercising, work addicted, disconnected, people pleasing person. I had to go from that to someone who had begun to feel her feelings, stop emotional overeating, stop compulsively overworking. In my case, I left my career because I understood that I couldn't carry on in that career at the same pace and take care of myself. And I also wanted to do something more authentic and more creative. So it was a total transformation. I also had to face my fears and change my patterns. So if I think about my final dating experiences before I committed to my husband, I really had to dig deep. And I spoke about this on the Fears and Patterns workshop. I was dating one of the guys I dated in my early 40s. I was very attracted to him. I really wanted it to work out, but I had to tune into my intuition and follow my intuition, listen to my gut, have a conversation, rock the boat, express my needs and wants, say what I was looking for in a relationship, ask him what he was looking for, and be prepared for rejection, which is what I received. He said no, that he wasn't interested in what I was interested in, a full-on 2 feet in relationship, and he said no. And, I had to go through that rejection, through the subsequent self-recrimination, regret, second-guessing, self-doubt. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. If only I'd stayed quiet, this relationship could have worked. I had to go through all that, sit with the feelings, come out the other side, and as a single woman in my early 40s, not knowing if I would meet anyone else, because that relationship wasn't right for me. So I had to make that choice. And, there were other occasions like that where I really had to face my fears and change my patterns. And then when it came to being with my husband, what a journey that was, from enjoying his company to begin with and dating him and having our summer of love, to rejecting him and thinking he's not good enough for me and he's not right for me. And also, he didn't want children. Did I? I wasn't sure. I have now discovered, hugely ambivalent and probably deeply opposed. Part of me was deeply opposed because of my childhood experience, but I had to work through all that and make a choice to be with someone who wasn't in the usual mold of the people that I had dated, and really face all those deep fears of being seen, being vulnerable, potentially, when we commit, we have to face our fear of being left, of being abandoned. And if we have been abandoned or left when we were little, that fear will be huge and it will feel almost life-threatening, and we will do whatever we can to avoid that happening, which is why we fall for unavailable men or women or people. Because if we do that, then there's no chance of getting super close and super intimate because they're unavailable. So we won't get so hurt. So I had to overcome all my fears of abandonment and being seen and being found wanting and not being enough. I had to go through the ordeal to have the real deal. I used a similar slide in the Fears and Patterns webinar, but my deep fears, and this is what set me up for the push-pull, for I want you, I don't want you, for the confusion around relationships. So I long for love. In my childhood, I didn't feel there was enough love, so I long for it. I long for love and connection, but I fear it. I fear it. I fear what it's going to do to me if it ends, if I get rejected. I long to be seen, to be fully seen and appreciated, but I'm scared of being seen in case you find me not good enough. And I long for commitment. I long for that commitment of a relationship, of a true partnership, but I'm terrified of it. Because what if I make the wrong choice or make a mistake or get it wrong or get abandoned or rejected? This is part of the Fears and Patterns work, but I wanted to repeat it here because it's part of my story. And I had to overcome this huge ambivalence and these huge fears that are connected to the younger me in order to get to my transformation. And that is what we're looking for. We are looking for a transformation. For me, that comes from building self-worth, healing those inner child wounds, raising my awareness, and making a decision to prioritize this area of my life, which is what I did. And because I was early 40s, because I knew I wanted to be in a partnership, and I wanted to make that happen. And then once we make that decision, we take the bold action, whatever those actions are. We face our fears and we overcome our blocks. You know, I'd love to support you to go on a journey of transformation. And I know you're on that journey already, you know, especially if you're familiar with my work or you've done similar work elsewhere. And maybe it's just about getting over the final hurdle, learning to date with courage, clarity, and confidence, getting yourself out there, getting the support that you need, having practice. It's all about practice. You know, some of us aren't great at relationships because we haven't had enough practice. So finding the courage to go out there and practice, remembering that all you need to know on the first date is, do I want a second date? All you need to know on the second date is, do I want a third date? And all you are doing is gathering information. And you gather information until you have your answer. Do I proceed? Do I not? And you do that in a mindful, conscious way, taking care of your heart, not giving too much, not investing too much, step by step. And, you know, I was a classic case for not taking things slowly. I would dive right in. I would give all of myself. I would get fully invested in the relationship. But we really want to slow things down. Keep pausing and reflecting. If you have my book, you'll know that pause and reflect happens at the end of every chapter. We keep pausing and reflecting. Do I want to move forwards? What is that intuition that I have? Do I feel that this person isn't treating me right? Do I need to speak about that? Do I need to communicate? Do I need to get out a bit more and date a few more people? So I'd love you to have a think about which layer needs to be your focus. And it might be all three, but you might have felt as I was speaking that you really need to work on your self-worth wounds, on your self-esteem, on your confidence. You might have felt that you need more self-awareness about your fears and your patterns. You might need more clarity about kind of person you are and who you want to be with, about your values, about your likes and dislikes. You might need to get to know yourself better, which is a wonderful adventure. Or you might need more courage to take the plunge, to go on a date, to speak your truth, to tell the truth, to stay, to walk away, to invest in yourself. So which layer is going to be your focus? Have a think about that. This brings me to your next steps. What actions would you like to take? How can you move forwards? What reflections has this workshop prompted in you, and how can you deepen those and act on them? Would you like to go on a date? Would you like to change your dating profile? Would you like to write down the kind of boundaries you want to put forward on a date, the promises you want to make to yourself? Would you like to get some support around dating? Would you like to be part of a group of women who are dating? And you're very welcome to join my next group program. Would you like some coaching with me? So I'm so proud to say that I have helped numerous women to get over that final hurdle, the final hurdle to commitment, to marriage, to cohabitation. So some of us just need that little extra bit of support. And if you would like your next steps to involve me in any way, I would be delighted to work with you. If you haven't invested in the 3 workshops in this Finding Love in Midlife series, you can still invest in the first 2 workshops. Send me an email, catherine@catherinebaldwin.com, and they will help you to deepen your understanding and your knowledge and your self-awareness. So if you would like to be part of a group of women who are dating and supporting each other to do that, then my next group program, my Love, Dating and Relationship Coaching program, resumes in September, starts in September. So come and join, and you can book a free discovery call with me to ask about that. My one-to-one coaching is available now. So if you would like some help getting over that final hurdle or just getting out the door and going on a date, I would love to support you. And I have an offer on my self-paced courses throughout August. So the code is August 25. I'll put the link in the email to you. But you can sign up for how to find an emotionally available partner, step inside, connect to your true self. There are lots of different courses, workshops and courses that you can access with that discount. What I love about doing this work is it brings fruit. So as you saw at the beginning, I have lots of clients who are now in healthy relationships, who came to me struggling with dating, struggling with patterns, maybe struggling with fear or low self-esteem, and they are now in healthy relationships, enjoying the rewards, enjoying a committed connection, and yeah, all the wonderful stuff that comes with that. So if you have any questions, I would be delighted to answer them. I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. If you'd like to send in any questions by email, please do. If you have any questions about the work that I do, or if you need to clarify anything from this workshop, I would be delighted to hear from you. So thank you so much for being here, and I wish you every success as you date with courage, clarity, and confidence. I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.